Tenzin Kunor is the Results Senior Associate for Global Policy. He came to the organization last year, and he's been a fantastic colleague. He is also an Education and Advocacy Coordinator at We Are TB, and he's got some good stories I think he'll share about his time with We Are TB. He's also the Americas Region Representative of the Civil Society Task Force on Tuberculosis at the World Health Organization. So I hope you'll join me in welcoming him.
All right. Can you hear me okay? Yeah? All right. So I want to start with this little thought exercise from the sociologist Elise Boulding. And it's to give us a different kind of view on time. So think about, we'll start by thinking about the oldest person that we know. They might have been somebody that held you as a baby, or a good friend, or a relative that's hugged you. Who is the oldest person that you know? Does anybody care to share? Yes. 95. Oh, excellent. All right. So, instructor of pickleball and 95 years old. And then, yes, one more. Yeah, we'd love to hear.
My mom, she's
85, mom, excellent. Thank you. And then let's think about the youngest person that we know. It might be a baby you've held in your arms. Who is the youngest person that you know? Great-granddaughter. Excellent. Okay, 2-year-old. Okay. 15 months old. Great nephew, you said? Okay, do we have one more over? Yeah. 6 weeks old, very young. So wanted to share this because when you think about who the oldest people are that has touched our lives, and who the youngest people that are that we will touch their lives, we have touched their lives, that's a different view than just looking at your own life. And for roughly speaking, we're looking at a 200-year view of life. And so that kind of look on life kind of changes our relationship to other people, changes our relationship to what change looks like over that period of time. And to me, it's been a source of hope as well as connection, because when you can reflect on what the past has looked like and the progress that we've made, because it's pretty easy to be discouraged lately. But if you look at the past and what the trajectory of change has looked like, it has become, for me at least, a bit of hopeful, a source of hope. And then also a source of responsibility to the young ones that are coming along the way. And so I wanted to start by sharing a few stories from my family, and I'll share some stories for myself as well. So to begin with, here is, so my dad recently published a book. It's this book over here, My Tibetan Heritage and Journey in Exile. And so in this book, I wanted to bring it up because he details a lot of health-related experiences throughout his life. And so the person in the middle is actually my grandfather. And so the story begins in the 1950s here in the first chapter. And this is on the Chinese invasion and illegal occupation of Tibet. And so he details what life looked like in Tibet before. And in the 1950s, there was a smallpox epidemic that the family was affected by. And so my dad's mom, my grandmother, she ended up dying of smallpox. And then also two of his daughters, two of my aunts. And at that time, there was vaccines available in much of the West, but not in Tibet. And so my grandfather in the middle, he actually got on horseback and went to the nearby cities and ended up getting a few thousand doses of vaccines. So my family in Tibet was quite wealthy at the time. And he was able to secure those vaccines and bring them to the community. And then, you fast forward from the 50s to 1980, and you've got smallpox eradicated. And so that's an incredible accomplishment by the world, by us humans, to be able to do that. When in just the same lifetime, you've got people who lost their lives and have their families be disrupted and go through some really difficult times. He later then talks about his life in the boarding school in India, where there was a lot of undernutrition and malnutrition. And if you look at now what that looks like in terms of children who, under the age of 5, the amount of children that were dying is incredibly sad, and the numbers are astronomical compared to what they are now. It's still devastating and way too high, but we've done amazing work. So even just in my lifetime, I was born in 1990, when you look at child deaths, it was about 13 million, 12 million a year in 1990, child deaths, and under 5. And then now that number is under 5 million. So within those 35 years, there has been considerable progress. Then later in the book, he talks about his experience with TB, tuberculosis, and I'll carry that story on in the next few slides. So all this to say that in that lifetime, just one generation apart but connected, there's been incredible progress that we should be proud of and look back on. And so here's a picture of me. This is 2013. And so this was, I was, at this time, I was part of a human rights activist group called Students for Free Tibet. And so we had a lobby day, a hill day. So I was in DC. I'm originally from India, but then grew up most of my life in Wisconsin. So actually in this picture, I had active TB. And I had been sick with TB. I had the symptoms for about 5 months at this point. And it wasn't that I wasn't showing up to the clinic. I was actually I had gone to the student, I was a senior at the time in college, and I went to the student clinic several times and got turned away saying it's pneumonia, it's a fungal infection in the lungs, take these antibiotics, you'll get better. But at this time, I actually, despite this little kind of grin, I wasn't doing that well. And then just about a month after that, things got quite bad to the point that I couldn't even walk, and I had a lot of chest pain. I had a lot of soreness in my throat. It was difficult to breathe. And then finally, so from actually experiencing symptoms, the onset of them, in November of 2012, I was finally diagnosed with TB April of 2013. So that's about 6 months or so. So that's 6 months on a college campus, potentially infecting other people, but also 6 months where I could have started treatment and started to feel better myself. And so here I am. Here's my parents visiting me once I was diagnosed, and my dad, he had his own experience with TB, and he had a lot of challenges himself. My mom, she actually took care of us my brother also had TB, and so we've had a family, and my mom's been incredible in providing support and encouragement and nourishment. And so I just wanted to kind of show you how TB impacts an entire family, and it's usually not an isolated situation with one person just being ill. And so later, at this point, I didn't know that my TB was drug resistant, but had some speculation that it might be, given my dad and my brother's TB being multi-drug resistant TB. So for TB, there's these 4 drugs that commonly work. They're the first line drugs. And for the TB that I had, that strain, 2 of those commonly used drugs didn't work. So that requires the second line drugs. And it's probably helpful to know that most of these drugs that I was on, they're all from the 50s, 60s, and 70s. So incredibly outdated, very toxic, lots of side effects. and a really long treatment process. So my whole treatment process was 28 months long, and it totaled like maybe over 8,000 pills in total. And this also included an isolation period. So it's a very difficult treatment process, especially for drug-resistant TB. Thankfully, there are better treatment regimens now. And so I wanted to share a little bit about, here's my brother, and so I want to share a quick story about what happened and my brother actually, I didn't know much about his treatment experience and his experience with TB because as a family, even though you're so directly impacted, sometimes you don't talk about these kind of things, partially out of stigma or in some ways you just don't share too many health-related things. And he ended up sharing with me, I did this project where I was interviewed my family members and community members who've had TB in Wisconsin. And he shared that, he shared about this experience when he first saw me arrive home from college. Because once I got diagnosed in college, I went back home for isolation and treatment, home to Madison. And he said this, and this was an interview, so I had it recorded. And he said, actually, I think I can actually play it. Yeah, let's see if it works. Oh, it works. Oh, are we able to increase the volume at all? Oh, it's got to be from here? Okay. Well, I'll just read you what he said. It's a little bit too quiet. So he said, and with mine, I had no symptoms. And with you, obviously, you looked like you were almost bedridden, like you had gotten out of the car and you could barely walk when you came back from lacrosse. That's the only memory I have of you. And I was thinking to myself, mine was the total opposite of you, and I wish I was as sick as you were, and I wish I could have switched places with you at that moment. And so, I don't know how many of you have gotten John Green's book, Everything is Tuberculosis. Yeah, there's one line early in the beginning, and he talks about, as humans, we can do so many things, but we can't do what we most want, and that's alleviate the suffering of the people we care about most. And so, this has always kind of stuck with me because TB affects an entire family and it impacts communities. And so a lot of our solutions and our responses need to center those kind of narratives. And so hopefully, throughout this presentation, we can do more of that. And also, hopefully this will paint a picture that even in a resource-rich environment and being so close to health centers and having access to them, it took me this long to get diagnosed. I had such a long treatment and arduous treatment process with a lot of side effects. So imagine what this might look like in a low resource setting, and how many more challenges there can be. So let's fast forward to, we gotta go here. So let's fast forward to January of this year and the stop work order and the funding cuts and subsequent program terminations. And so this is a couple of quotes from February of this year. So quite early on in the stop work order. We got this information from some people documenting the impact. The second one is from a colleague actually from the task force that I was part of. And so the first one, I don't have money to buy medicine. I feel sicker every day. My children are small and they need me to take care of them. I don't know what to do. And then this is a young mother who's sick with TB in Pakistan. And then the other one, 60 to 70% of our operation was supported by USAID, and the suspension has had a high impact. Its impact is not just on us, the host organization, but also the network, the national network. They're structured down to the community. And so with these abrupt program terminations or funding withdrawals, they've totally disrupted the health system. It's not just about providing treatment or doing testing, but you're disrupting an entire health system and supply chains, and it's been really challenging. So this second one, this program in Cambodia, they actually had to lay off 5,000 community health workers. And they were the ones that were going door to door, doing testing. They're working in really remote areas, building trust with people. And at this point, they were still able to provide treatment. This is quite early on. But they stopped their active case finding. So they weren't going around and screening people. And the numbers for the people getting diagnosed with TB had just plummeted after that because you're not doing that critical work. So with the infectious disease, you need to keep doing this kind of active case finding. One, to stop the spread of TB. Two, the sooner you can identify TB and diagnose, the quicker somebody's going to get on treatment and stop that suffering. And then three, it's a real opportunity to connect that care to the rest of the family. Because if somebody's got TB, likely the family members might have TB, or they might have latent TB or other conditions that are often connected. And so this is some of to document some of the impact. And there was a really good question earlier. I kind of saved my response so there can be more conversation. But as far as impact, it's incredibly helpful in our meetings, in our advocacy. And a lot of the work that we do, the global policy team, we're connected to a lot of the partners. We're part of different coalitions. Hopefully it can be conveyed, and maybe I'm happy to take feedback and provide more support to you all and how those, the materials that we're providing can have more of that affected community narrative or can highlight more of the impact that we're seeing. So that was excellent feedback, and we can start to think about what that could look like moving forward as well. And that's something personally that I think is incredibly important and something that I've always wanted to make sure that it's at the heart of our advocacy. So thank you, and we can try to do more of that. So yeah, moving forward, it's been incredibly challenging with the destruction of USAID. When you look at just how many programs have been terminated, there's only 17% of the programs that have survived. And now, in some ways, we're trying to figure out how to preserve and protect the funding itself within certain areas, and then ensure that those programs actually be carried out. So you look at TB, there's been good news around funding for bilateral TB, and that means that there could be, the funding might be there. Now we have to ensure that the programs are actually carried out, the money is actually spent for TB, those outcomes are actually met. And also when you think about staffing and systems, they've been totally decimated. So you look at USAID and bilateral TB programs, there's only 2 staff members left. And so we need to ensure that those staffing levels and the systems are bolstered again. And it was a really good comment around concerns about money not going directly to for impact in the places where we need them most. So at least on my specialty and focus area is TB. So when you talk about TB and bilateral TB USAID programming, it's actually on the leading edge of localization efforts. So the target numbers for those funds going directly to the communities is much higher in TB than other areas. And that's something we can continue to advocate for and say that's a priority. So with all this that's happened, in some places with these health systems, the Global Fund is keeping things afloat. And so I wanted to share a little bit about what that kind of work looks like and how important it has been. And so here's an image of, this is some work that has happened in Pakistan by the Dopasi Foundation. And this is an effort that's partially funded through USAID and Global Fund, but this kind of work is what these organizations have supported. And you're taking ultra-portable X-rays with computer-aided technology, detection technology, and you're going to rural areas. So this is an effort to reach coal miners who are particularly vulnerable and at risk of TB, and doing this kind of screening. So these are areas where it's not easy to find a TB doctor. It's not easy to find a pulmonologist. And And you're providing the technology and tools to be able to identify TB and make sure that people have access to treatment. And so the CEO of Dopasi Foundation, Kins Ul Iman, actually joined us about 2 months ago, for some meetings on the Hill, and the work that they do is incredibly innovative. And I can say, just like from the meetings, you can see how staffers are amazed by the kind of work that's happening that doesn't even actually happen in the US. And so a lot of these efforts and the technology and the strategies that are being rolled out, they're actually strategies that we can benefit from in the US. I know there's an outbreak, a TB outbreak in Kansas, and these are the kind of tools that, there are rural communities in the US that don't even have access to some things like this. And so looking back on the Global Fund and just the creation of it and what it looked like 23 years ago, this was a time in 2000, well, more than 23 now, 23 now. But around that time, this was a time of really huge inequity when it comes to HIV, AIDS, and malaria and TB, particularly on HIV. And you had ART widely available in the US and the West, but almost pretty much non-existent in many other low resource settings. And so there was a lot of injustice and inequity. And this is actually what access to treatments looked like for HIV. This is what the treatment coverage for TB and malaria, prevention efforts. And so this is what it looked like at the creation of the Global Fund. And 23 years ago, Dr. Peter Mugenyi said of HIV medication, where are the drugs? The drugs are where the disease is not. And where is the disease? The disease is where the drugs are not. And so this has been the story of the past century, and in many ways it remains the story. But we have made incredible progress, and today, this is what, in 2023, from the last report that the Global Fund has produced, this is what treatment coverage looks like now. And so with this work, that's 65 million lives saved because of this access to treatment, because of this access to prevention, and all the other strategies that come along with trying to end these diseases. And so when you look at combined mortality, combined death rates for these three diseases, they've been reduced by 63%. So it's incredible progress. There's still so much work to do. There's still a vast amount of inequity within these diseases and across health systems within our world. But there's been a lot of progress we can reflect on and things that we can continue to improve. And so here's some of the key results. This is from 2023, just to have an idea of the reach of the Global Fund. And then it kind of begs the question, how does the Global Fund actually do this work? And how have they actually been able to be so successful? And so when the Global Fund was created, it wasn't just about drugs or just thinking about prevention alone, but it was intended to be a different kind of organization and one that's fundamentally different than many others. And so this is, hopefully it was the intention of having a different kind of impact, that biomedical solutions wouldn't be enough. And so the whole process for Global Fund is, you're going to raise a lot of money. You're going to pool as much funds as possible together, because the places that have the biggest disease burden don't always have the resources and the money to actually fight the diseases. So it's a solidarity approach that, when you think about the pandemic, when you had the COVID-19 pandemic, it took a global response. And with pandemics, it takes a global response and a shared burden and shared responsibility. And so Global Fund doesn't tell the countries that it works in what to do. So there's over 100 countries where the Global Fund works. They don't have I think it can be seen in different ways, but the Global Fund doesn't have offices in any of the countries. And so there's a real investment in communities and relying on the experts within countries to identify what the needs are and why, and developing what those mechanisms look like. And so one key element I wanted to share with you is the country coordinating mechanism. So these are called CCMs. Each project, country, they've got CCMs, and they're, think like a committee of like 15 to 30 people from different sectors coming together. And so this includes survivors, affected communities, civil society, private sector, philanthropies, and you got ministries of health, of course, and then you've got technical experts. But they're all coming together, and the affected community and civil society really have a voice in this whole process. And so when you look at the different boards that exist, there's voting positions that are dedicated to civil society and communities. And so it's kind of it's in the mechanisms and in the structure, you can see that you can't fight epidemics alone. And so this means that all these different sectors have to come together if we actually want to end these diseases. And so just a quick overview of what this process actually looks like. That's a little bit more visual. Hopefully that's helpful. Raising the funds and then making the plans. So the countries and communities are working together to make these plans and projects, and then they're reviewed and approved by the Global Fund. And then the local experts are actually leading these programs. And then the oversight is provided with support from the Global Fund, and that results into real impact. And so I think there's been a lot of questions around the foreign aid apparatus and critiques around it's not efficient enough, and also that there are too much overhead costs. And so in many ways, I think Global Fund is a great example of what it looks like to keep it fairly minimal. And when you look at secretariat overhead costs, they're roughly 6%. So much, much less than it could otherwise be. And more of that funding goes directly to the communities and the people who need it most. And so I think it's good it's totally okay to be critical and at the end of the day, it's important to emphasize impact, and we want to see the outcomes. We want to challenge the mechanisms. Even within these whole processes, you've got civil society and communities. They're constantly advocating and ensuring that their voices are heard, and we continue to try to support that as well. And so shifting into a little bit more of some of the specific work, and then we'll close with some questions in a few minutes. And so one really important piece of the work that high impact pooled funds like Global Fund or Gavi, they're able to scale out new innovations. And so historically, traditionally, TB is a very old disease, and when we've been able to diagnose it, it's taken too long. And so smear microscopy can take, really long time, and even weeks in low income settings, and you've got new innovations that can diagnose TB in just hours. And so GeneXpert is one. The other one on the right is TrueNat tests, and so these are the kind of scaling of innovations that is required if we want to tackle epidemics like TB. And so when you think about scaling, but also trying to shape the markets, Global Fund and also Gavi, they have very similar market shaping strategies where you're guaranteeing bulk orders, and then you're working with a lot of entities to reduce those costs. You're guaranteeing that manufacturers are there's a demand that's there because you're pooling all those needs. So that means, the lower income settings can be able to have access to these with this kind of support and volume guarantees. And then, some of the health systems, it's also about the warehouse and the supply chains and making sure that service delivery actually reaches people. And that means going to places that haven't traditionally had access to healthcare systems or services and meeting people where they are. And then I'll close a little bit with talking about, what can a sufficiently funded global fund do in the next few years? So in the next 3 years, it could save 23 million people from the three diseases, avert 400 million infections in this period, and help build sustainable health systems. And so looking at, historically TB is the oldest infectious disease, and it's claimed a lot of lives. And even when you think about since a cure for TB has been developed, still 150 million people have died. So that's a lot of people. It's not a matter of science. It's more of a matter of injustice and inequity. And that's something that we can influence and shape. And so then you think about 2 billion people who are infected with latent TB. So that's the form of TB that's not active, where you have symptoms, you're not contagious, but it can become active. So that's 2 billion people in the world with latent TB, 13 million in the US. And that's over 10 million people who have active TB every year, 1.25 million in 2023 that died of TB. So there's a lot of suffering, and there's a lot of challenges. But hopefully, with that, we can identify what the path forward can look like. And for TB, there's a lot to be optimistic about. And so we've got improved treatment regimens, we've got improved diagnostics, we've got 16 vaccines in the pipeline. And so it's a matter of funding and political will. And here's what some of the projections were for global funds replenishment. And so with the successful replenishment, so that's $18 billion across the 3 years, this is where we could be. And so there were goals to end TB in 2030, like there were goals to end poverty in 2030 many years ago. Those aren't going to happen, but we can make lots of progress actually. And so just having a look at what we could accomplish with a successful replenishment when it comes to TB is reducing TB deaths by 57%. And that's providing treatment coverage to 95% of people with TB. So that's extraordinary if we can do that. And to think about how long TB has existed and how many people's lives have been affected by TB, and to know that within just 1 decade, we can make so much progress on the disease. It certainly gives me hope and encouragement to keep moving forward. And so I wanted to go over some of this, but I think I wanted to provide a recap of what Colin from the Global Policy team covered. And I think most of you probably listened on the webinar, national webinar, correct? But I'll just do a really quick recap, it might be helpful. So basically the White House proposal, the budget from earlier in the year, was really devastating, but it's a proposal. And when it comes to the issue areas that we're working on, it looked really bad. Zeroing out, halving many of these funds. And then the response from Congress is just a few weeks ago. We had the House NSRP bill, global health spending, and it restored and actually increased in one area. But restoring that funding and flat funding programs in this environment is an extraordinary win. And so I've been thinking about, any one action that we've taken, whether it's with results or We Are TB or other people that have really taken action on these issues. Isn't one thing that I could point to and say like, oh, that made the one difference. But the collective efforts certainly did make a difference. And so I can't imagine this actually happening if there were no results. And so that's what I wanted to close with and thank you all because this gives us room to advocate for it in the Senate SFOPS bill that will come out in September. And for Global Fund, the number was 1.5 billion from the House, and that's actually higher than what they proposed last year. So there's still room to negotiate, and curious to see what the Senate bill will look like. But it looks overall, it's really an encouraging sign in a lot of ways. So it's terrible, and the bill was terrible in a lot of ways, but in the areas that we've worked on, it's a moment to reflect on all the work that you've done and to be proud of that work. So we can skip some of this. And then I wanted to close with just this part right here. So this was from our TB Hill Day, April of this year. And so there are a lot of advocates from all over, a lot of John Green's TB fighters. The majority of them are John Green's TB fighters. Many of them were new TB advocates and new advocates to global health and anti-poverty efforts. And so I was surprised at just how many people actually had heard of results from this group even, and how thankful they were for advocates that had been doing this work for decades. And even earlier this morning, getting to talk with Eloise, Claudia, and others, and just thinking about, you've been doing this work for, you said 30 years. And so that's the work of, that's nearly my entire lifetime. And so, especially as somebody who's, a survivor of TB, and I've just been so appreciative of everything that you've done and been able to cultivate this kind of bipartisan support that didn't just magically appear. And so it means a lot, and hopefully, we'll keep going with these efforts, and a reminder that, our big goal to fight against poverty is still there, and inspiring Congress to do that. And then just, my job hopefully is to provide the tools and the support to be able to do that. And so hopefully, we'll continue to persevere with all the strength that's required, and the hope, and also the compassion. And in closing, I thought of this quote, and thinking about a lot of this work is bearing witness to the suffering that we see in the world. And so there's been so much suffering, especially this year. And sometimes, there's so much happening, and you feel like, you need to turn away at times, but with what we've seen, it's incredibly important to bear witness to that suffering and be able to advocate to change that. And so it's compassion. Thinking about compassion, it's not just bearing witness, but it's compelling us to define what's unacceptable. And so that suffering is unacceptable, and I need to do something about it. And so even a small action, when done in community and being persistent, is making a difference. And so thanks for all your advocacy, writing letters, and all the work with the Dear Colleague letters as well, which were phenomenal this year. To just being connected in community and those friendships that have lasted across decades. And so our collective effort and voice will certainly make a difference and continue to. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Any questions for our esteemed colleague?
So when it comes to global health, can you share what the European countries are doing as part in participation in these programs?
Good question. Yeah. So it was a positive sign, at least who's hosting the replenishment conference. And so for Global Fund, The campaign is underway, the replenishment campaign. The conference itself is going to happen in November. So that's hosted by South Africa, and then the UK is joined in that hosting. So hopefully that's a good signal that there'll be a good contribution from the UK. And then one thing that we should continue to advocate for is around preserving that match rate. And so the 1 to 2 match rate holds other donors accountable to contributing. And so part of that is working with advocates across the globe and trying to, I think in the next few weeks, it'll be helpful to I think it's already a good signal saying, looks like, the Congress is saying we want to support the Global Fund much more, considerably higher than what the president's budget said. And so that should hopefully incentivize and try to encourage more contributions. And so I think there's already been a few commitments from countries. Spain is one of them. I can't remember some of the others, but they're starting to trickle in. But preserving that match rate, especially for now the Senate, in the Senate bill. So if you have Senate meetings, mentioning the importance and the value of the match rate, the 1 to 2 match rate, because there were proposals to change that match rate to 1 to 4. So every $1 that the U.S. contributes, other donors will match that 1 to 2. So we need to preserve that one. But that's a good question. I think that's something we're continuing to work with other advocates and kind of government to government doing that kind of work. And so on maybe this is, I don't know if it's too much information, but maybe some helpful context. Some of the work that we also do is working with other advocates around the world and their MPs and making the connections and like, for example, drafting letters for members of Congress saying that they support the Global Fund, continue and kind of encouraging MPs and members of Congress elsewhere to ensure that they're supporting as well. So it's an ongoing effort. I think a lot will evolve in the next few months. Yeah.
And thank you for coming all the way here.
My first one was good.
Hi, I'm Frank. I just wanted to ask you, how do you account for the success in the Global Fund when other emergency and food and other, the BU study that showed 300,000 have died since aid was eliminated and an estimated 30 million more. I know you can say good lobbying and good effective lobbying, but how do you account for the fact that the others have not had the same degree of success?
Okay. I mean, it's, you raise a good question. I think in many ways we can continue to support and highlight areas that are losing funding and we're seeing a lot of suffering. And so, and in ways that you could still connect to the issue areas that we're working on as well. So any kind of loss in humanitarian aid and increase, it's going to translate to more poverty, more instability. And so those are still concerns and massive concerns that affect the same issue areas that we're working on. I didn't get the piece around some of the question. I didn't hear.
The emergency food and others have not been as successful. How did you account for it?
Oh, what would we attribute some of those differences to? It's hard to say, yeah. I that's a good question. I don't know exactly why. I don't know. It's hard to pinpoint why that might exactly be, but I can speak to why some of these were advocated for well, and and survived. And a lot of it is those kind of building those champions and being able to. It's pretty clear that these are effective, impactful, and important, just as those other programs are. But it's hard to pinpoint exactly why. I can just speak to kind of why these ones were well supported. Yeah. It doesn't make sense to me.
Just to tell everyone that Tenzin is coming back to Dallas on October 23rd of this year for a public event that we'll be sponsoring, and I hope some of you are able to come, as well as lots of other people, to hear his fabulous story and also the information that he gives us. Thank you.
You are, and you are.
And I'm Marty White, part of the Dallas group, Margaret's group.
And what's the event?
Well, it's a fundraiser and a information event for people in Dallas that have supported results over the years, and we hope they'll be as generous this year as they have been in the past.
Thank you, Marty.
And I've never actually been to this area before, but now I'm going to be here twice in just a couple months. Wisconsin.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, everybody stay in your place. Joanna's going to take us home.
That is right. Woo woo! Texas, Oklahoma. Good to see you. So today and many other days, I have the best job at results in that I get to share I get to celebrate y'all right now. We get to share some appreciation. So I want to begin first by thanking all the folks at All People's Church for use of this venue and your wonderful, wonderful hospitality today. Thank you very much. Let's also give it up for the group members from Fort Worth who've put in a lot of work to plan. Stick your hands up. Let's see. I want to know who you are. All right. While we're at it, let's say hi to all the groups from across Texas who've made it here. For the folks from Dallas, would you raise your hands? Let us know who you are. All right. How about Austin? Hey. How about Houston? There we go. And Oklahoma. Yeah. You know, leadership is a very important part of being a results volunteer. There is nothing passive about what we do. We are very active, we take action, and we also take time to share our talents with other folks in our group. So real quick, can I have the group leaders raise your hand? Group leaders in Texas and Oklahoma, raise your hands. Thank you all for that leadership. How about all of our congressional point people? If you have been a point of contact for your member of Congress or someone else's, look at that. Fantastic, fantastic. How about any Action Network managers or new advocate mentors up in here? All right, Kathleen, Craig, very good. And Natalia, excellent. Claudia, maybe? Okay, cool. Any other leaders in here, folks who maybe are media point people or other special researchers or whatnot? Kyle is there, raising that hand. And Marty, excellent. Thank you, guys. Lastly, any current or former fellows in the group? Wonderful, wonderful. While we're here today, I had a good chance to take a look, thanks to a wonderful regional coordinator, Ann Child, who can't be with us. I would like to recognize RCs. Our other RC, of course, is Craig. But could we make some noise for Ann so that she could hear us all the way back in Oak Ridge, Tennessee? That's right, that's right, that's right. She was able, as you all know, she keeps meticulous records, and one of the reasons that I think this region is as strong as it is because Anne keeps us on our toes. She lets us know if we're meeting our goals, and she helps us celebrate our successes along the way. So she's given me an update on meetings and media, and I want to recognize groups for both of those things. So let's talk about meetings, those meetings with our members of Congress, both virtually and in person. For this calendar year so far, Oklahoma is clocking in at 8, Fort Worth 7, Dallas, 13. Houston, 6. Austin, 12, for a total of 46 meetings. Excellent work, excellent work. And out of 339 total meetings across the network nationally, that accounts for 13.5% of all meetings nationally. Fantastic job. So out of 14 regions, we are responsible for 13.5% of all meetings. Excellent, excellent work, everyone. Now, these next set of statistics come from media, and this is what I'm really excited about because the end here is just really special. So Oklahoma, of course, Tiffany had a wonderful, wonderful op-ed earlier this year, so they've got one on the board. Fort Worth has 5 published pieces. Dallas has 30. Incredible. Houston, with Angel Jackson's letter to the editor, 15, just incredible. And Austin, 23, just incredible, incredible. So we tally all those up, and we've got 74 pieces of published media. I know a lot more have been written and maybe not published yet. But out of 319 pieces of published media across the network, we have 23% of all published media right here in this region. That is incredible. Kudos to everyone. But as we say in results, numbers mean one thing. Stories make those things come to life. So I wanted to ask folks, if you wanted to share, let's take a few minutes. If you want to share a story that really stands out for you this year, something that's made this year special, or something that's helped you see your own power to change the world this year. Okay, go for it, Chuck.
It's actually an old story, but I was reminded of it just this couple weeks ago, and that is one of the founders of Results was my mind's gone blank now. Dorsey Lawson with Sam, and Dorsey had a congressman by the name of Jerry Lewis. And Jerry Lewis, when she went to meet with him about the Child Survival Fund proposals, he said, "I hope they all die. All those, because I don't want them to grow up to be communists and fight us in the world." So Dorsey didn't give up. She kept going back to him, acknowledging him for what he did do, and asked him to do other things. He said no a lot. And then something happened in her sharing with him such that he changed his view, became a sponsor of the Child Survival Fund, co-sponsor, I should say. And he spoke to our Results conference a number of years ago. And he said how much he really appreciated Results because he had been a lifelong advocate for taking care of children. We thanked him, we acknowledged him. That's what his view is now, is that he's been a lifelong champion. And that's empowering in the sense of she went to see him a lot, and she could have been discouraged a lot. And she did not give up. She didn't make him wrong for what he did. She followed our philosophy and our training, and that changed the world. Right there. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing, Chuck. Is there anybody else who'd like to share?
My name is David Bindi, and I'm from the All People's Church. And every Sunday we get together and we kind of bemoan the things that are going on in the world and in our area and our country. And I think when we all do that, we also need to be reminded of all the good things that are happening. little things and big things, and this is a big thing. This is a huge thing. But I wanted to share just a couple of good things that can happen in a real small area. Our church is about 100 people, max. We did a concert this spring, and it's a musical about hunger and poverty, and our little church raised over $5,000 worth of food and clothing and supplies that we donate to our Eastside Ministry, which is our local group. And if anybody wants to, there's underwear and socks and backpacks, $5 a pair. You can put a $5 bill in and donate to the fundraiser we're doing there. But I also want to share something that happened this spring. And I'm probably going to break out a little bit. We get worried about making a difference. And we had a concert at this church. There was about 7 different churches that joined together, and we did a fundraiser for the North Texas Transportation Network, which is a group that makes funds available to people who have to travel out of state for medicines, medications, and stuff. And we filled this church with 200 people. It was standing room only. I think we're only about 20 people away from code. But that group raised $27,000.
Wow.
So as we're fighting all the things that we want to fight for, we also have to celebrate the things that are happening, the great things that are happening, whether they're little or they're big, because that's what will make us all a difference in celebrating those great things.
Absolutely. Thanks for sharing.
So you all know what's happened this year. It has been devastating, heartbreaking. After being in results for 30 years and standing up for children who are dying unnecessarily, and TB patients and AIDS patients, and making sure that children can get into school and can learn to read and do math and thrive in this world. This has been really difficult. But you know what? Last week, after the president zeroed out our stuff that we've been standing up for 30 years, Congress, the U.S. House turned around and they put that money back in there. Now, our efforts aren't finished. The Senate has to do it too. And then they have to stand up to this president who will ask for a rescission. But by golly, we are changing the world. Congress put those funds back in there.
That's right. That's right.
And thank you for all you do.
Thank you all for sharing. There are certainly so many reasons for us to be hopeful now. And I think for me personally, I've spent a lot of time in the past 6 months, 7 months, 8 months, feeling like this was being done to us. We were waiting to react, waiting for the next bad thing to happen, and unable to find our footing, unable to put an affirmative good out in the world. But I honestly feel, I truly feel, spending this time with you all renews me, it restores me, and it helps me feel stronger for the fight, so that when we go to the Senate, and that we make sure that that funding is there, because the will is there. Congress knows this is a good thing. We know it's a good thing. And these are values that we can carry forward from our country to the rest of the world, in our country, throughout the world. And I'm so fortunate to be able to spend this time with you all, being in community with each other. Anybody can volunteer for something. Anybody can take action. But when you're together with other people, invested in our lives, our kids, all the stories that bring us to advocacy, it makes a difference and it gives us staying power so that we can be volunteers 30 years on. And I look forward to that time, I truly do. So before we close, I'd like to ask us, we started the day, Alexis outlined Ann's activity, drops in the bucket. Would anyone like to share what's next? What's your drop in the bucket? What's it going to be next time? I know for me, Frank, you asked a question when Tenzin was up here, and it reminded me, when all the cuts were coming to USAID, the idea was, or at least one rationale was, that cuts to foreign aid could be applied to domestic poverty programs because poor people were starving and unhoused in this country. But was that money used there? No, it certainly was not. And I've said to myself, I'm going to write an op-ed about that, but I haven't done it and I keep putting it off. So that's my drop in the bucket. I'm going to write an op-ed and you can hold me to that. Anybody else want to share their op-ed or their drop in the bucket? What's it going to be?
My drop in the bucket will be, I will still be requesting meetings because in September, I will be going back to the Hill and advocating for the very issues that we're fighting for here in this room today. And not only will I get to go, but I get to take my daughter with me. So that is going to be a transformative experience. For her to know that she will get to go to places that they don't want us in. They may not want us in these spaces, but that's okay. We're going anyways. She will know that she has the key to get access to places that they're trying to lock us out of. So yes, that's my drop in the bucket. I'm going to continue to write op-eds and LTEs, whether they get published or not. And I'm going to continue to be a strong voice for Oklahoma.
All right.
I was going to share this before, but then it didn't seem right, but now it is. One of the things to remember is when you write a letter to the editor, they might not publish it, but when enough people do, they'll pick one or more letters to publish. So their letter wouldn't get published if you hadn't sent yours. And so don't ever be discouraged. If you write a thoughtful letter, it doesn't have to be perfect.
Send it in.
Even if they don't publish it, if anybody else did, Results or any other organization, you contributed to that. So don't get discouraged.
So your drop is you're going to write a letter to
I'm going to write a lot of letters to them.
There we go. That's the spirit. It's over in the corner there.
Joanna just made this point, but as staff, we are on results staff because we care about these issues. So we don't stop taking action and just depend on advocates and grassroots to do it. And I've been involved with results for over 12 years at this point, and I've never been published. But that is because I barely write letters, so that is on me. But earlier this month, my representative is Trent Kelly, and he sends out a newsletter from his office each month, and he is a very strong Donald Trump supporter, and he put him in his email signature. I don't know what to do with the mic. He put him in his email signature. That's how much he likes him. And this month, the newsletter was about the alleged big, beautiful bill, and it just spewed all these falsehoods and blatant lies, and that's coming from his office and is delivered to thousands of people's inbox each month. So I wanted to write an LTE to just dispel all of these untruths, because you have to counter the lies with the truth. And to be honest, I just haven't had the time or the energy, but we have to do it. So during the session about ChatGPT, I love ChatGPT. I am a frequent user. I use it multiple times a week, but I never thought of using it for an LTE. So my action this month, and y'all can check me, make sure I do it, is to use ChatGPT to help me write an op-ed or an LTE that will educate people about the truth of this bill, because the person who should be giving them truth is feeding them lies, and we have to counter that.
Woo-woo!
I'm Mary Kerwin, and I'm a member here at All People's Church. Craig and I go way back. I'm going to take a look at ChatGPT, and I've never used it before. However, I think it can help me wordsmith a lot of my message that I plan to use when I make my phone calls to Congress and the White House.
There you go. Sounds good. Any other folks want to share their drop in the bucket?
Who's that?
Anybody else? All right, Jerry.
Jerry, what are you?
Hey everybody, so I'm Jerry Becker, brand new member to the Austin group, only been a member since April. Is that better? Yes. Okay, Jerry Becker, Austin group. I think a drop in the bucket I've been inspired to do from the ChatGPT session, I brought this up with Joanna earlier, I was really impressed by the ability to practice interviewing or a back and forth conversation. Because I'm so new, I'd like to develop a laser talk, and I still haven't gotten around to doing that. But watching that just kind of inspired me to think, okay, as I go through the process of developing this laser talk and I'm trying to commit it to memory, that just seemed like a really excellent tool for me to bounce off of ChatGPT and go through the process of really memorizing and locking down that laser talk, so I'll be able to deliver it seamlessly in the future. So that inspired me.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jerry. All righty. Well, thank you all so much. I hope that the drops in your bucket lead you to think about leadership within your local group. And that could be, if you're nervous about the commitments and the responsibility that come with a leadership role in your group, there's always co-leading, which is a great way to be able to share that responsibility. Yes, please. And speaking from experience, I found that, yes, the commitment was greater for me, but also the deepened relationships were well worth that commitment. So if you see your interest kind of guiding you in that direction, think about it. Talk to a staff member, talk to your RCs, talk to your group leaders about where you'd like to go with that. And also, think about applying for the National Fellowship. This is an excellent, excellent experience. We had a wonderful time in DC. That time in DC is precipitated by a lot of webinars together with your cohort, building those relationships with folks, talking about values and the future. It's a very hopeful experience and one that will gain you a lot of skills. So please consider that as well. And of course, you can get in touch with any of us here. I'm so excited to have been here to be with you all. Last question. Who is hosting in 2026? No takers? If only. We'll leave this one open, and I'll pass it off to Craig for the last word.
A little bit of housekeeping. Please turn your name tags in at the table where you came in, and you will